Hey, what's up, Canada and beyond? Welcome back. It is Monday, October 28th. Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, grannies and gators, it is a giant dumpster fire out there, no matter which direction you look, right? So we're gonna not keep you guys overtime tonight. Partly because, well, I may as well just get right into it. I'll start with where we always start. Guys, make sure you get plugged in if you are not yet plugged in on Substack, whatsupcanada.substack.com. That's where all of the extras, the bits and bobs, the gold nuggets, the downloads, the links, everything that we cover on this platform has been, not an issue. There's been no censorship on Substack whatsoever in our community case, anyways, and we've broken 1,000 converts over there. And this is getting kind of critical because the censorship is getting just beyond insane. But tonight we're going to keep you just under an hour because I'm going to be over helping out or holding down a seat, I guess, for for all intents and purposes, on the mashup live stream covering the Saskatchewan election starting at 6 o'clock in Alberta on the Sean Newman podcast. So that'll be fun. I think they're planning to go all night on that. So I guess if you guys are interested, he's told me I can stream it on my platform. I'm going to try, but it's getting tougher and tougher and tougher. I got another strike on YouTube, so no more streaming to YouTube, at least for the time being. But we are streaming on Odyssey tonight for, Odyssey's been kind of a backup library channel. If you want to see any of the oldest stuff that I've done, that's where you'll find it, is on the Odyssey channel. I'll start adding the link to that as well. But after the show tonight, we're going to be over joining Sean Newman. So I'm going to start with a little bit of an update to put everybody's mind at ease over the next coming week. And on November 5th, the night of the election, we will be taking part in a watch party, stream party with Sean Parnell, the People's Pundit, Savage Rich Barris, Wendy Bell, Brock Schneider, the whole gang of them. So we're doing our best to make sure that we get the most accurate election coverage on November 5th. But Patrick Bet-David had this to say on X today, and I thought it was pretty accurate. So I'm going to read it out for everybody on the 4x2s that can't necessarily see it. So 15 signs Trump is going to win, barring a black swan event. So barring something absolutely crazy and ridiculous, right? So the LA Times refused to endorse a candidate, first time in 20 years. WAPO, Jeff Bezos, that's the Washington Post, refusing to endorse Kamala. Bezos wants more conservative writers at the Washington Post. Right? Celebrity endorsements are backfiring instead of working like they once did. Trump's one interview with Rogan got more views than all of Kamala's interviews did combined in 48 hours, 72 hours, something like that. It's just crazy. So mainstream media stopped talking policies, instead using fear porn to win, calling everybody that doesn't agree with them Nazis and Hitler, kind of like the liberals here, right? Republicans are leading early voting, which rarely happens. Tech CEOs are calling Trump, not Harris. Tim Cook, he's referring to. European stocks have dropped 7% since late September due to fear of Trump's tariffs. Democrats are losing both the Jewish and the Muslim vote. Wow. Even blackmail and bribery isn't working with them anymore, right? Trump rallies in blue states bringing in record-breaking attendance. Coachella, 100,000. MSG, Madison Square Gardens, recording-breaking attendance. Kamala has lost the black vote. She's doing worse than Clinton, Obama, Hillary, or Biden, and she's allegedly black. AOC and Tim Waltz playing Madden streaming on Twitch. Final score ended 0-0. Desperation at the highest level. From April to September, Trump branded merch on Amazon sold 140 million versus 26 million of Kamala's. Steelworkers Union in Pennsylvania endorsed Trump. Border Patrol Union endorses Trump. And last but not least, Putin endorsed Kamala. So, for a succinct estimation on why Trump's got it in the bag, barring some sort of bizarre shenanigans, I think Patrick Bet David kind of nails it on that one. And guys, I want to thank you if you hit the thumbs up when you came into the show tonight. And I definitely want to thank you for the shares. You guys are helping us get past some of the algorithms, and it's brutal. It's brutal. They keep hitting us where it's making it impossible for people to get notifications. I was on a show from Nova Scotia today, and he said he finally got notifications for the first time in months and months and months. So it's getting crazy, and you wonder why? That's why, because Trump is destroying the narrative space. So next up, we've got this quick little short from Richard Wolff on the implications of China owning 800 billion in U.S. debt, and I think this is critical for people to understand, just in the shortest form possible.
If China owns 800 billion of U.S. debt, which they do, then of course the United States, as the borrower, has to pay interest, which means that you and I and everybody else gets to pay taxes every year that go to Washington, where they don't fund our roads or schools or hospitals. It's money that the United States government collects and sends to Beijing to pay interest on the debt, and the Chinese use to develop the Red Army. Do you understand? All of this has to happen beneath the surface. Because if Americans understood what I just said, they would realize that beneath all the reality is the opposite. That's the reality of the economic of capitalism. If China,
So it's the same but different in Canada, right? When they own you, and this is where, one of the things that they're not telling you is how much we are paying in interest, and this is the part that makes the collapse of the economy inevitable. Whether we like it or not, no matter what we do, this currency, this system is unsustainable. And this is one of the reasons why we get war out of it, is because of those kinds of things that they don't let the average John Q public understand or know or tell the truth on. So if that is not pretty good justification for a tax revolt. Not that I'm encouraging anybody to revolt in any way, shape, or form, but it hardly lends credibility to what they try to force upon people, right? So this next clip is from the Toronto Sun from yesterday, and it's a good one, and you'll catch on what they're saying here real quickly. But this is so indicative of a sick system, and indicative of the collapse of a democracy. And at the end of the day, more another point where we can continue to put the heat on, as far as for pulling some more carpets off more of the underbelly of the swamp. So we'll digest this here in a couple minutes, and I'll probably chime in with some rant or rave of some sort.
My name is Nando DeLuca. I appear as counsel for the Conservative Party of Canada. Given the limited amount of time, I am appearing virtually. By way of a roadmap, I intend to use the 7 minutes allocated to my client to urge one particular factual finding upon the Commission that we say emerges as a clear theme from the evidence the Commission heard. With any remaining time, I will address 1 or 2 policy points that we say the Commission should consider as it tackles the factual issues it identifies. First, the evidence this Commission has received points directly to and fully supports the conclusion set out in this morning's Globe and Mail editorial, which we say this Commission should also be brave enough to make as a finding of fact. That is, when it comes to foreign interference, the needs of the Trudeau government, not Canada's, have been the guiding principle. The Globe also makes the following assessment, which we would adopt and which we submit the evidence this inquiry supports. Image over substance and party before country. For many months, for far too many months, that has been how Mr. Trudeau and his Liberals have approached what should be the deadly serious matter of foreign interference. While the evidence that was made available to the public on this inquiry was limited by many constraints, some facts became clear. In the first phase, we learned that Mr. Trudeau was briefed about matters of foreign interference with respect to prospective candidate Han Dong within hours of the deadline in the 2019 election to substitute in a new candidate in Don Valley North.
So he lied.
Rather than risk not having a Liberal candidate on the ballot in a single riding, Mr. Trudeau put party before country and turned a blind eye to the intelligence about Mr. Dong. And Mr. Trudeau cannot hide behind any professed imperfections in his knowledge about all of the intelligence and all of the facts regarding the Dong matter. He had unfettered access to all of the Dong information in 2019, and he has had unfettered access to all of the information, classified and unclassified, that has been developed in the subsequent 5 years. Mr. Trudeau wants Canadians to believe he took serious action with respect to the information he received about Mr. Dong, but this is false. Instead, Mr. Dong successfully ran as a Liberal candidate in a subsequent election in 2021 and sat in the Liberal caucus for a total of 4 years until the allegations against him became public in the face of Mr. Trudeau's inaction. It was only then, we are told, that Mr. Dong, apparently of his own volition, rose in the Commons and indicated that he was withdrawing from the Liberal caucus. Since then, Mr. Dong is on record that he would like to rejoin caucus, and Minister LeBlanc is on record that he is willing to mediate Mr. Dong's return to the caucus with the Prime Minister, only to have Mr. LeBlanc tell us last week that the Liberals are now waiting for the Commission's report before taking the matter up again, thus continuing to leave Canadians in the dark 5 years after the fact on what is a very serious matter. In the second phase, we learned more about a warrant connected to foreign interference in our democracy that languished in the hands of a Liberal partisan political staffer for 54 days. Although Minister Blair confirmed the target of the warrant publicly and under oath in the first phase of the inquiry,
that Trudeau lied about.
The Liberal government lawyers now want us to now pretend that they do not know that it targeted Michael Chan, a power broker with deep and long ties to the Liberal Party, both provincially and federally, and that the warrant application would have no doubt affected other highly placed Liberals on the Van Wienen list. Minister Blair and his chief of staff, whose own ties with the Liberal Party run long and deep, twisted in the wind with no explanations as to how a politically sensitive warrant that would impact their party was allowed to languish for 54 days. The answer is obvious. Upon receipt of the warrant application and its targets, they realized that there were a whole lot of Liberals that were going to be surveilled by the security agencies around foreign interference, and the information that was going to emerge was not likely to be helpful to the Liberal cause. So what did they do? They simply slow-walked the application so that it took 6 times longer than the usual 9 days to get processed and approved. And rather than there being any consequences, the Prime Minister declared his full faith in Minister Blair and Ms. Astrabas. Of course he has full faith. Prime Minister Trudeau has full faith that his partisan ministers and partisan political staffers will do whatever they can to stymie investigations that would impede foreign interference that they perceive as helping them. And finally, the Prime Minister's nakedly partisan performance here last week, performed only as a drama teacher could, confirmed that rather than taking foreign interference seriously, he's content to leverage it for cheap political gain. With great dramatic effect, and in an oratory reminiscent of Senator McCarthy's name speech in 1950, the Prime Minister solemnly announced that he was in possession of a list of current and former Conservative parliamentarians that were at risk of foreign interference. A few minutes later, though, in cross-examination, he was forced to admit that his list of names included not only Conservative Party parliamentarians, but indeed Liberal ones too, a fact that he conveniently omitted in his evidence in chief. And then, when I tried to press him for further details about this salacious accusation that he had leveled, rather than coming clean with Canadians, the Prime Minister and the government took refuge in the so-called national security interest privilege, which it seems appears to be quite malleable in the hands of those who control it. We saw ministers and senior staff who have never been briefed, and when they had been briefed, they had no recollection what they had been told or what they had said or done. It is apparent that the current government has treated foreign interference as a partisan tool that it can ignore or enable when it thinks it is benefiting it, or as we say here, trying to turn into a distraction when faced with other political scandals, like the news this week of 1/3 of the Prime Minister's backbench caucus calling for his resignation. With respect to policy, we believe that this commission should find that the government has the constitutional and legislative resources at its disposal to combat foreign interference. When public servants, elected officials, or others in the public life are being targeted by foreign interference, they can be told. The Prime Minister has no problem rising in the House of Commons to disclose otherwise classified information when he wishes. And the Commission should conclude that national security actors are already empowered under Section 12.1 of the CSIS Act to employ what are called threat reduction matters, TRMs, to brief individuals that are positioned to take action to reduce threats, even if those individuals are not the direct target of the threat. There is nothing in Section 12.1 that prevents that. And if there is any ambiguity or shortcoming, the Commission can and should provide guidance to clarify it. Finally, we caution against recommendations that would impede the free speech of Canadian citizens or political leaders. The idea of using the threat of foreign interference in democratic processes as a trigger for the government to try to further regulate what Canadians see or say is not something that should result from this inquiry. Indeed, it would be a sad outcome if the threat of foreign totalitarian states interfering in Canadian democracy resulted in greater government curtailment of Canadians' free speech.
Right? Like, I mean, this is, it's gotten to the point where Canadians are being censored and punished as a part of the crime spree, right? Now, that should be terrifying given how much control China has over our government and what they are trying to hide from all of us. So it seems as if there might be some movement, hearing some understandings or articulations that the RCMP are actually, in fact, have ongoing investigations into some of this. I mean, I'm not buying any of it, but Canada is way overdue for some exposure to the corruption. I mean, this country literally hangs in the balance. And so, given what we see coming down the pipe with Bill C-293 and Bill C-63, we're kind of at the end of the runway with this government and these overreaching pseudo policies that this tyrannical government that reigns through terror is actually operating from. So we have to support the police, not attack them, but we have to tell them we need answers now. We want answers now, and it's time to do some real police work on all of this. So now we're going to switch to the India story here, and this is Moose on the Loose. I'm not sure if you follow him or not. I kind of like him, but this is he puts together this great piece from the other side of the discussion that I think, it looks worse from inside of the jar as far as for where we're at. And I don't know how to really articulate this, but so Poland is now initiating investigations into Canada. We talked even on last week about Merrick Garland on Thursday. They're investigating the corruption of Canada. The wheels have come off of the Ukraine experiment. Project Ukraine. Wheels have come off of that, the bus on that. So we're literally down to last gasp crap from these New World Order, WEF, Fourth Reich types. And Canada is still the jewel of the crown in Klaus's new Reich, right? So the walls are closing in on Mr. Trudeau from the outside, not just the inside, not just inside his penetrated cabinet, but also from the outside. So I don't think we get to hear enough of the other side of the story when it comes to some of the crap that they're using for propaganda here to support and prop up government and distract us and all of that. So cheers to Moose on the Loose for this piece.
Party. Beijing wanted them to win. Justin Trudeau and his Liberal Party. Beijing wanted them to win. So they tried to influence voters against the Conservatives.
Things are heating up with India again. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. In today's top story, we've got Indian news here just destroying Trudeau again. So what's happened here is Trudeau's team has released some information to the Washington Post. And how it works is when the RCMP gets information, they investigate it, then they bring it out after they have proven a crime or not. In America, they bring out the information and then they investigate afterwards. So it's a reverse approach. And that's why Trudeau's brought this out. It's a way to essentially attack Indian media, attack Modi without having to do it through the Canadian process. The sneaky little rat has found another way to distract from the SDTC scandal. He's now dragging America into this. It's become an absolute crap show.
And yet he just in the forest for the inquiry produced his regular act and actually alleged that whistleblowers were criminals. But yet, when it serves him.
So first up, we've got some news here from India, and then we'll bring on the RCMP commissioner, who was interviewed on CBC, and the interview is quite woke. I'll warn you, it's a woke interview. And then some more of India absolutely destroying Trudeau.
In some other news, despite the Royal Canadian Mounted Police putting an embargo on publicly announcing sensitive information that pertains to India, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's National Security Advisor and Deputy Foreign Minister has gone ahead and leaked classified information to a US-based newspaper, The Washington Post. In fact, what we're getting to hear is that the Canadian newspaper, The Globe and Mail, who first reported this development, also said that actions of Justin Trudeau's top national security and intelligence advisor and deputy minister at Global Affairs, in fact, are in sharp contrast to just how Trudeau said he feels about the leaks of classified information.
He's getting called out.
Mr. Speaker, we now learn there are about 40 Liberal MPs that believe that this NDP Liberal Prime Minister is not worth the cost, crime, and corruption. But there's this strange rule in the Liberal caucus that you need to have permission from the Prime Minister to speak at the microphone. So a Liberal MP wanted to get up and say quadrupling the carbon tax is a bad idea, or doubling housing costs is making people homeless. They can't do it. Will the Prime Minister lift the gag so his Liberal MPs can say to his face that he's not worth the crime, the cost, and the corruption?
Indian news is absolutely savage, pulling out this clip.
Siddhant joins us for more on this. Siddhant, this is shocking. I mean, as it is, bilateral relations between the two nations are at an all-time low. The big question is, did Trudeau's advisor actually leak that classified intelligence on India in the US media?
Well, yes, that's what the allegations are. And in fact, this was deliberately done so that, message could reach India.
Sorry, I want to pause for this comment. It's a little bit off topic, but does Trudeau prorogue within a week? I think Trudeau prorogues as soon as he gets C-293 through. So that's just my insider thought.
Yeah, and also to malign the reputation and reputation of India. And this was deliberately done to the US-based newspaper, Washington Post, because, the idea behind doing it was so that US the people in US and the US citizens get to know that look, this has come up in an investigation, and
That's
how
a whole
India
other
is
scam.
involved in
I've got a
extrajudicial
story on,
killings in Canada.
but not
Perhaps
today.
Indian government, the agents of the government of India are in hand in gloves with the gangsters based in Canada. So this is a part of
Go follow him.
of an operation to malign the reputation of India, perhaps to create an atmosphere, sentiment against
Like
India,
Elizabeth
so that
May,
after this,
or another
if
story we're going to
Mr.
look at.
Trudeau and his foreign minister comes in public and make allegation against India, people believe what they say. And perhaps that was the idea, that was the strategy which was put in place by the government of India. And Mr. Trudeau can go to any limit to malign the image of India, because maligning the image and the reputation of India is perhaps serving his own political motive.
Good
And this is the
question.
reason the other day when the fresh fiasco broke out between the two countries, the re-escalation. At that time also, instead of him doing the press
Bingo.
conference, or somebody from his party of the foreign minister, he made RCMP to do the press conference first, so that people will have more trust and people will believe in what the police force is saying or law enforcement authority is saying. So, this.
Justin Trudeau used the police force, the RCMP, to gain more trust. This guy is bang on here. This is so scathing. If I were to guess, I'd say these guys are 100% accurate with what they're reporting here. So Trudeau is team leaked this information, so then it would sour the image of India, and then he's saving face. He's using RCMP to do so, and the RCMP even said it themselves in the upcoming interview I'm going to show you here.
This is a larger game plan, and everything is being done through with a proper strategy being put in place.
Now, most shameful there with the security advisor briefing the Washington Post on sensitive intelligence on India, and this will further only lower the bilateral relations and further deteriorate it, which is
They're
at an
more
all-time
honest
low.
than
But
ours.
India is to press for the extradition for Canada-based terrorists. We're also getting this exclusive.
Let's jump over to this interview now with Mike Duhame, RCMP commissioner. It's straight from the horse's mouth.
But it's an interesting thing that with all of the heightened concern over leaks of classified intelligence with the foreign interference inquiry going on and that political controversy, that we do read in an American newspaper.
They're waiting for us.
briefing
We're
from
walking into
Canadian
an
officials
ambush,
about a Canadian
100%,
investigation of the
We
murder
are.
of a Canadian.
But we can't ignore it.
I mean, were
We
you
have to
surprised to
fight.
see
We
that
just have
there,
to
or were
make
you
it
aware
too
as
big.
the head of the
We
RCMP
have
that,
to win
that
the
this was
fight.
going to happen prior to your news?
Well, as I mentioned, in order to have maximum impact on the actions we've taken, we were looking at a broader audience, and when I say we, is government. Was looking at a broader audience, and again,
We as government, as in this guy's probably sitting in Trudeau's office and strategizing. That's what it sounds like to me.
and I go back to what was structured to provide to other medias if they wanted information. This was what it was.
Okay, so you gave, is this information, there's some reporting I've read and some conversations I've had, that a lot of this is information that would either be in the U.S. indictments, come out in the U.S. court process, or might very well be turned over to defense in disclosure here in Canada as part of the criminal proceedings that are happening here. Is that what this is pulled from in large part?
It would be pulled from anything that, it would be pulled out of the open information that we had, some of the things that we expressed on Thanksgiving Day. We wouldn't go into anything
Yeah, Thanksgiving Day, we know. When the scandal was getting it to its height there, you guys had to distract. Trudeau needed a deflection from what's going on.
that would link to ongoing files or anything that could jeopardize a case that's before the courts.
Or do you think you will get to the point that someone from India, in India, from the Indian government, could be charged for a crime here in Canada?
We have multiple ongoing investigations, and I always say that.
Now, I don't actually believe that the RCMP did this for Trudeau to distract for his benefit. I think the RCMP are doing this because of India and the pressure the RCMP are getting from outside of the country in India's defense. So by that, I mean the U.S. isn't buying Trudeau's story. They're not buying the timing. And other nations are not buying any of the crap. And so I think that the RCMP may actually not, because they really, really want to, but I think they may actually be doing some real police work at the behest of outside pressure, because it's pretty much looking, the writing is on the wall, as we started the show off with. The writing is kind of on the wall on who they're going to have to be working with next. And that matters. So I think that that's more likely why the police were trying to get people's attention on Thanksgiving.
You never know from seizing a phone, going through information in the phone, or talking to someone where that might lead you. But we do have strong evidence, not intelligence, but evidence that
Evidence, folks. Strong evidence.
this goes all the way up to the highest level.
Okay, so what we've seen.
This goes up to the highest level. He's saying right now this is directly connected to Modi in India. That's what he is saying.
Directly connected to Modi in India is what he is saying, and I think that that means the lack of fixing this. And why did Brenda Lucky step down is another incredibly good question. So there's a lot more pressure coming in these. It's just like all of these swamp zombies. They are finding what they think is safer pastures elsewhere.
Has he become the mouth for Justin Trudeau for more scandals and corruption? I
What
don't
do you
know.
think?
Is he telling the truth? I don't know. At this point, though, it's hard to trust anyone in this situation because Justin.
I know that we really don't have any trust in them coming through on anything, but do you think that there's a possibility that there might actually have to be some real police work done in Canada, at least in order to provide a few sacrificial lambs for the public to appease the masses and give the illusion of a legitimate government and enforcement and accountability? Could this be the guy? Somebody at some point, if we're going to get Trump as the next administrator next door in chief, is going to be leaning on these kinds of people. So I guess the time will tell. But I personally actually think that we're going to see a few sacrificial lambs for the good of the party while they rebuild and regroup. Or I could be completely out to lunch.
Justin Trudeau is so corrupt. We don't know if they're involved in this or not.
In the United States, because their disclosure is more robust and earlier in the process, much to the frustration of journalists here in Canada. But there are similarities in what we believe to be the case here versus the murder for hire plot we talked about there. It is almost like this was the modus operandi, it would appear.
Based on what I read on the indictments, there seems to be a
Indictments
pattern.
are good.
And I do agree the judicial process that we have here and what the U.S. has is completely different.
Yep.
They disclose everything up front and continue the investigation while we have to go through our judicial process before the courts to disclose anything.
So you say you have evidence that this goes to the highest levels of the Indian government. I mean, Prime Minister Modi has obviously rejected this. His national security advisor has rejected it. And there is a pretty intense public relations, if not propaganda campaign to push back against this. The evidence that you have, is this something that will be disclosed in court? Is this something that could lead to an indictment of an Indian official who is overseas and maybe beyond your reach, but is it of that weight and seriousness that we can see that sort of action?
So I go back, David, that the fact that the evidence that we will be able to produce put the government in a position that they trusted the RCMP with the evidence that they had to expel 6 diplomats. And some of the evidence that I'm referring to will eventually come out through the judicial process that we're in right now.
But I wonder, sir, then, and maybe you can't answer this, but will we have a name of who at the highest levels of the Indian government was directing this or is believed to be directing this? Could we see a charge against them? Because I appreciate expelling the diplomats because you can't charge them because of diplomatic immunity that wasn't waived. But I don't want to say they aren't held accountable, but they get to go home, and they were probably going to go home anyway.
We can hope.
What about a criminal charge against somebody?
Again, there's some ongoing investigations, and I'll leave it at that. That you never know what it might uncover. So,
Jumping ahead in the interview here, the CBC, being the woke's paid off CBC, has to get a shot at the Conservatives. They just had to tuck this into this interview. This is just disgraceful.
Okay. I know you were involved with this because of the threat to public safety and the crimes that were being alleged. But there is reporting through public documents of political interference by India. Most recently would be conservative leadership races. Is the RCMP investigating that in any way?
We
Lucky
do
it
have,
was
and
evil.
I actually mentioned at the press conference on October 14th that there's 4 key areas we're looking at. One of them was political interference.
But specifically
I
on
think,
leadership
something
races,
new is
nominations,
due.
what can you zero it down?
I'm not gonna.
So David Cochrane wants him to say something. He wants him to name the Conservatives. He's staying out of it. I respect that. I respect that he didn't name one way or the other or support him or say yes. So I don't really know where this guy's allegiance lies.
Zero in on anyone other than we are investigating.
Okay, because people will hear that and draw conclusions. I mean, what would you caution them against concluding from what you've just said there?
Well, let us do our job. Let us do an investigation. If charges are warranted, everything will come through our judicial process.
Jumping back over to Indian news, they absolutely destroy and humiliate Trudeau with all his involvement in China and funding from China and interference.
Couple of comments I wanted to touch on here, Nanasu. I think he was too. He definitely was not comfortable. This was a comment. So there were 4 names that were released, and I think that was again just part of the sacrificial process. Now that's now it's one. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Right. So that was part of the process that we have to keep biting at them. Watching from the collapsing U.S., Allison, we're the petri dish. It's going to happen 90% faster here because we have 10% of the population and equal, if not more, natural resources and wealth. So we are all under siege from the same deep, dark forces. But you guys at least have a little hope. Maybe it's hopium. I don't know. But I think the evidence speaks for itself. What 4 years of Kamala would look like versus 4 more years of Trump. We'll see, though.
This election, the whole thing.
This
week, his feud with India dominated the headlines, but in the past 2 days, a new scandal has surfaced, or should we say resurfaced. And Trudeau himself is at the center of it. He's been Canada's Prime Minister since the year 2015. He's serving his 3rd term in office, which is an impressive record for any politician. But did Justin Trudeau win these elections with China's help? Canada's main opposition leader believes that is the case. His name is Pierre Poilievre. He's the leader of the Conservative Party in Canada. He's made some serious charges. 2 days back, he wrote a letter. Poilievre talks about the last 2 elections in Canada, where China apparently had a role to play. And this is what he wrote. Justin Trudeau, and I'm quoting, Justin Trudeau is lying to distract from a liberal caucus revolt against his leadership and revelations he knowingly allowed Beijing to interfere and help him win.
Why doesn't Canadian tax-funded media do this? I'm not going to say mainstream media or news because that's who we are now, and a whole lot more authentic and community oriented. But wouldn't it be nice and refreshing to see some of that on the boob tube?
2 elections. So Poilievre says that China interfered in Canada's elections. Justin Trudeau looked the other way. In other words, Trudeau was complicit. That's the allegation from Pierre Poilievre, and it's not a new one. Leaders before Poilievre have made similar charges. It's a ghost from the past that keeps coming back to haunt Trudeau, but this time he's having trouble shaking it off.
I'm not saying that, Steve. Not for a second. Not here.
The allegations
You know
of
that.
Chinese meddling. This investigation has been on for months. Unlike the case with
But
India,
people aren't
where
gonna
Trudeau
believe me
launched
till
a
it
diplomatic
happens.
war without proof, there is substantial proof of Chinese meddling in Canada. It was a wide-ranging operation. China tapped every available resource at its disposal. Chinese proxies in Canada, state
I'm
entities,
afraid
Chinese officials in
that's
Canada, the Chinese
what we gotta work
diaspora,
on.
even Chinese mouthpieces, all of them were mobilized for this mission. And Beijing had a clear goal. Get friendly politicians elected to the Canadian Parliament, politicians who can push China's agenda, or at the very least, not stand in Beijing's way. And China had a clear preference here. Justin Trudeau and his Liberal Party. Beijing wanted them to win. So they tried to influence voters against the Conservatives. The Conservatives were viewed as anti-China, so they became targets of Chinese meddling.
This is unbelievable. It's on the news. Like, you would never, ever see this on Canadian news, just openly just pointing at Trudeau, working with the Chinese government, absolutely scathing. There's a reason for that, because they don't want to bite the hand that feeds them.
And this happened in the last two elections, in 2019 and then in the snap election in 2021. And don't take our word on this. This is what Canada's own intelligence agencies say, that there was Chinese meddling in the last two elections. In fact, I have some quotes from their assessment. It says, China clandestinely and deceptively interfered in Canadian elections. China is, and I'm quoting again, the most significant source of foreign interference in Canada, and Beijing acted in a sophisticated, pervasive, and persistent manner.
Now, if we jump out here for a second, what do we got here? Oh, it's China Council for International Cooperation on Environment and Development. And who's this? It's Stephen Guilbeault. He sits on this board. The CCI-CED's executive committee consists of chairperson, blah, 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 blah. You can see down here, Stephen Guilbeault is the executive vice chairperson. This guy's entrenched in China, and this seems like a conflict of interest when you're talking about reducing emissions. And he's come out and said, well, how do I go talk to China if we don't reduce our emissions first? He wants us to suffer first, and then he can use that as some sort of template to go to China and say, see, you guys could suffer too. This is a load of crap. And even the Globe and Mail, which is often leaning left, has an article here saying Canadian minister urged to quit Chinese government advisory body chaired by senior member of Politburo. Federal Conservatives are calling on Environment Minister Guilbeault to resign from his position on this Chinese advisory board, a body chaired by the former chief of staff to President Xi Jinping, and to end Canadian funding to an organization that instructs Beijing on green development. Throughout this article, it talks about him going over to meet with China. Yeah, he's meeting with China. He comes back with solutions that just hurt us.
China targeted Canadian politicians at all levels. And how many voters did they manage to sway?
Look at all these robots here. The Chinese military is absolutely ridiculous.
Sorry, I needed to pause that because I needed to vent a little bit on who Stephen Guilbeault is. He is the most successful eco-terrorist infiltrator in the history of our government, a 100% fully committed syndicate operative for the climate cult. If you had to label his mafia, it would be the climate, the eco-terrorist mafia. That is who Stephen Guilbeault is and represents, and he has been one of the greatest traitors to our country since Trudeau brought him into the fold and gave him a what do they call the lieutenant's jobs in the mafia. That's where he's been making his bones for. Did Stephen go to jail before? Thanks for asking, Steve. Yes, a couple of times, actually. One, they've kind of swept under the carpet, but he climbed the tower in Toronto, him and his buddy, and caused a giant expense to the public with him in his orange jumpsuit, terrorizing against big oil, big energy, cheap energy. That was Stephen Guilbeault. And I think it was just a short time after that he had to up the stakes. So he climbed, at the time, Alberta Premier Ralph Klein's apartment building and held Ralph's wife hostage for a couple of hours for one of his climate extremist messages to get across. And so he has been a career sycophant to the climate cult and a danger and a threat. And the day he was anointed, I did a video, I think I called it, I See My Hitman Coming. So that was Stephen Guilbeault in a nutshell. But yeah, they buried most of his background. This is the guy that's running around selling out Canada, getting taxpayer-funded money through NGOs, lobbyist organizations, and front companies, to run his anti-energy. So he is literally stealing your money to go to other countries and say, don't buy Canadian energy and we'll give you money and perks. That's Stéphane Jobin.
On this front, the assessment by Canadian agencies is inconclusive, but the Conservatives hold a different view. They believe that Chinese meddling definitely hurt them, and it cost the party at least 9 seats. That's according to Erin O'Toole. He led the Conservative Party until 2022. He says China's meddling hurt his political career. Again, I have a quote from him. This is what he says. The small number of seats would not have impacted the minority government that Canada has right now, but the difference of 2, 3, 5 seats may have allowed me more of a moral justification to remain as leader. So Erin O'Toole lost his post. And even after all of this, Justin Trudeau's Liberals ended up with a minority in the Canadian Parliament, but somehow he is still the Prime Minister.
If we just go back to Stephen Guilbeault and his involvement with China, well, that's why he won't touch this. These are the coal exports from Canada to China. And you can see here, it's kind of wavered a bit, but it's gone up in recent times. And this is 2022 here. So these are 2 different types of coal. These numbers should be going down if they're pushing climate change. So they're making us suffer, but they have no problems exporting coal to China. If we scroll down here, we've got this one here. So this shows the import and exports. So see these little lines down here? These are imports to Canada. So our imports of coal are going down, but our exports are either staying even or some of them are going up. We're exporting more thermal coal to China. Here's a graph here showing the prices of exported Canadian coal. Now, this is something really interesting to think about, because if you see the prices are low and then it spikes up here. Now, we don't have the most recent data. If Stephen Guilbeault is tied in with some people in China, and I'm guessing they would wrap in Justin Trudeau and probably other cabinet ministers, if they're exporting coal and it's making a lot of money and they got some backdoor deals there, they don't want that to end because it's making them all a lot of money, which you can see right here. So maybe this is the reason they aren't touching those coal exports, because they're getting something on the back end. Remember, these guys are all a bunch of greedy losers.
So I want to, while he's got this graph up here, I want to make this point about Bill C-293. And, this should be enough for all Canadians to go, whoa, wait a minute. See, this big spike here of the increase in green policy, green transition shit. When Bill C-293 passes, they are going to steal every future dollar while they commandeer your bank accounts, your financing, because they are going to have to create agencies and employees for all of the pandemic responses, to steal everybody's farms, to force consumption of protein. It is literally Bill C-293 is going to unleash it's the foundation of what they need to move forward. Remember when they tried early to hire those 800 fully armed climate specialists armed with AR-15s? Well, picture that times 1,000. It was $3 billion bill for the Truth Agency that they wanted to implement. So picture that times every industry that they want to, as they said in that bill, to commandeer or assimilate given pandemic level crisis. So this is what C-293 is going to open the bank vaults, open the wallets, for them to justify, legitimize all of the spending that they're going to need to steal from you, we the people, to build the bureaucracy, agency, and clone troopers to support the new pandemic treaty. So that's what's on deck in why we seriously need to come together to reject Bill C-293. Oops. Sorry about that. Almost done.
And they've proven their greed to us time and time again. They don't care about Canadians. We jump over to this one. We can see this is China's clean energy expansion, May 24th. So this is very up to date. So the coal here is this one. It's coal and gas, this black bar. And then they've got nuclear and hydro and biomass, and then solar and wind is the yellow. So China's actually getting more of the other ones, but they're still using coal in large amounts, and it fluctuates based on, I'll show you another graph here. It's based on the time of year. So this one here, you can really see it in the time of year. The years are down here, and basically when it gets really cold, they fire up the coal plants to provide more power, and then it goes down throughout the summer. So you can see at the end of 2023, that's when it flares up because it gets cold and then drops off, and then you'll see this jump back up again as it's getting colder now. But this chart here is the same thing. This black color is coal. This blue one here is the nuclear biomass and solar. So China is slowly moving towards more green energy, but they're still using a crap ton of coal. If we look at this one here, it's a global energy-related greenhouse gas emissions. Coal is this big one down here. And if we look at this one, this is coal consumption. It's the same thing. There's a lot of coal being consumed. So really, the solution to greenhouse gases is coal, is to get off of coal. But once again, jumping back here, there's probably some sneaky ties between Guilbeault and Justin Trudeau and maybe some other Liberal cabinet members. In my opinion, this is why they're not touching coal exports, because somebody's getting rich, and it's usually someone in government.
Then last year, another shocking revelation came out. It centered around a man called Han Dong. He's a sitting parliamentarian in Canada, of course. Dong has been accused of interfering on China's behalf. In 2021, he met a Chinese diplomat. He tried to block the release of 2 Canadians from a Chinese jail. Dong has denied these allegations, but guess which party gave him a ticket to contest? Trudeau's Liberal Party. Last year, when the story broke, Dong left the Liberal Party, but he holds his seat in Parliament as an independent. Imagine that. Canada has a sitting member of Parliament accused of foreign interference, still in Parliament, but all Trudeau cares about is India.
Yeah, that's unbelievable that he can still sit there and vote or whatever. And he's worked with a foreign government and he's still allowed that traitor. Like, our system is completely broken.
Fact is that the threat from China is still high. Again, this is from their own defense minister, who says China has not stopped its interference.
I actually raised that concern of foreign interference in all the manifestations that it might take, including interference in our institutions, including our elections, but also in actions of coercion against Chinese diaspora in Canada. There are citizens.
It's a good way to deflect.
That was true.
The mastermind of the G20 riots himself.
Trudeau's defense minister, Bill Blair, he made that statement earlier this year. The meddling allegations date back to the year 2019. It's been 5 years. In all these years, Canada has witnessed 2 elections and multiple reports corroborating the Chinese meddling. What has Justin Trudeau done to address the threat? He keeps underplaying it. So is he complicit? Is he benefiting from Chinese meddling in Canada? As Trudeau would put it, we don't have hard proof of his complicity. Perhaps the Canadians will investigate.
Next up, just a brief clip here showing how India has noticed Trudeau will do anything to cling to power.
The manner in which the whole thing has developed, I think it's very unfortunate, and it really speaks about, number one, the immaturity of Justin Trudeau, and number two, his desire to cling to power under any circumstances.
That's just it. Trudeau will do anything to stay in power, and he's proven it through this whole situation with India. Indian news calling it straight, whether they're completely guilty of this or not. They're straight shooters when it comes to international news, that's for sure. Justin Trudeau is just humiliating Canada on another level, just more and more and more. He just doesn't care. Anything to distract from the SDTC scandal, using the RCMP, flushing those documents over to the Washington Post. It's every day with this guy, something different. Justin Trudeau does not represent Canadians. He represents himself and is himself only. One of these scandals, one of these things will take down Justin Trudeau and the Liberal government. I'm sure of it.
We just got to keep hammering on it. That's literally what we have to do. This one is kind of disturbing, but this one, I watched this a few days ago, and it got me thinking. What is the cost? What is the price of woke? Right? Yeah, and I mean, can't even put a dollar sign on it. So this one really got me thinking about that. So this is more morbid facts, guys. He's one of my distractions, if you can call this kind of thing a distraction. But he brings up occasionally some incredibly glaring truths. So you guys all remember Brittany Griner? Yeah, think about what happened here.
Morbid Facts, Part 301. Nicknamed the Merchant of Death, Russian arms dealer Viktor Bout rose to power after the fall of the Soviet Union in the early 1990s. Using his fleet of 60 cargo planes, the arms he's brokered have helped fuel conflicts in countries including Afghanistan, Angola, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Somalia, Rwanda, Liberia, Sudan, and Sierra Leone.
That's a pretty serious bad guy.
Willing to sell weapons to anyone who wanted them, Boot has supplied both sides of multiple civil wars and is said to be responsible for the deaths of tens of millions of people.
Tens of millions of people. That's who they set free to appease the woke cult.
He was arrested during
Trump
a sting
didn't do that.
operation in 2008, where he was caught selling surface-to-air missiles that would have been used to kill American troops.
Or take down airliners.
But Victor Boot is now free thanks to a prisoner swap for WNBA player Brittany Griner, who was arrested 6 months ago after trying to bring a THC cartridge on a Russian airplane.
And why did they have to rescue her? Because she's a dude. And she claimed bigotry against the Russian state for throwing her in jail. They only did it because she's trans. So poor trans victim, shitty ass basketball player could only succeed playing with the women. Then became the this is the price of woke. Somebody responsible for tens of millions of people's deaths is free to virtue signal they protected a dude pretending to be a woman. But this should inspire you. This little
I'm hearing the story more and more. People are fed up. Bring that orange fella back ASAP.
So, like many Americans, up until recently, I did not care about politics. Quite honestly, I didn't even vote until 2020. I've ended friendships over views that are just not okay. Why do I have a college degree and I make decent money and I'm living with family? I can't afford groceries. I can't afford my car payment. I can't afford anything. My parents have to help me, quite honestly, and I'm going to be 30 years old. I really want to know, this is my question for the people that think that this country is okay. What are you watching? What algorithm are you on to think that this country is okay? What job do you have? What do your bills look like? What is your income? Like, I really want to know, because I am just lost. I am so confused.
I'm hearing the story more and more.
So, it's good. I mean, I'm not happy she's suffering, but it's exactly what people, it's good to see these kids that are being the attempted programming of the Marxist left on these kids isn't working on all of them, and they're getting out there and they're asking the right questions. So I feel her frustration. In the more we come together on real issues, like C293, and start listening to the youth. They're not as lost, all of them, as what we think. Was fortunate enough to take part in a conversation with some of them today, and it's inspiring. So I'm going to have to chop a couple of the things that I had planned for the rest of the show, but I'm going to finish off with this last one, and actually I'm going to play you out with a song. I'm going to run a minute late, but I'm going to play you out with a song. I wanted to first cover this final story, though. Decision to censor a Toronto Catholic trustee was upheld by Ontario top courts. And you might go, what? A Catholic trustee censored and the courts upheld it? It's not what it first appears. So Michael Delgrand loses another round in battle stemming from comments about sexual fetishes during debate about gender issues. And so this is him, and he's arguing that, so the short clip here, trustee by Isabel Teotonio Education reporter trustee says Trustee Michael Delgrand lost another round in his legal battle after Ontario's top court upheld a ruling that the Toronto Catholic School Board acted responsibly in censoring him for proposing sexual fetishes be added to the code of conduct during a debate on including gender issues. So I think that is a thumbs up for the good guys in this case. As a ruling released Wednesday, Ontario Court of Appeal upheld last year's decision by the Ontario Superior Court of Justice Divisional Court, which found the Catholic School Board District acted within its scope of authority when censoring Delgrand for comments he made at a November public hearing. So I actually do support this incidence of censorship on this individual. I don't think sexual fetishes should be used to justify the debate on gender issues. Inappropriate, should not be allowed in the playbook. He can say what he wants in a public space, but to add them to the curriculum, hell no. Hell no. Double hell no. Right? So this song I'm going to play you out with, guys, on a rare treat. It's from a Patriot Down Under in Australia. I was introduced to that through an international conversation today. It's from Maddie Rogers. And I'm going to add the link. The reason I'm playing it for y'all here tonight is so that I have an excuse to add it into the Substack tomorrow. Expected to hear more from this song, or hear this song more as we get a little further down the road into the next round of what do y'all think life is going to look like after Trump wins, or perhaps doesn't win. Enjoy the song.
When I broke the chain that you had on me, I threw it down and I walked away. Now you're my name, it echoed loudly to those around, leaving no shame. Out of my head, now here I am, running the show. When I look back over my shoulder, you felt me behind, out of my view. Come on, catch me, you can. Oh, no, I'm free. Come on, catch me, you can. I got so high, then I took slip down. I took a breath and kissed the ground. I freed my mind, washed over my soul. Left it behind, lost control. Come on, catch me, you can. Oh, I'm free.
All right, so that song is called Free Man from Matty Rogers. He's a patriot in Australia. He wrote this song a number of years ago, and they hounded him for it. I listened to it a couple of times today, and then I listened to it a whole bunch more, and it's not the greatest recording, but I'll see what I can do about that. I'm not sure if it was a YouTube thing or what, but sounded great to me. I was kind of here bopping behind the scenes. But anyways, you guys, that's a wrap for tonight. I love you all. Stay mighty, my friends, patriots, family, prisoners, and hostages. If you didn't hit that thumbs up on the way in, please hit it on the way out. Make sure you get subscribed on Substack and get on board, do something to get involved with some of these hashtags, the subject matters. Get in front of, help us fight C63, 293, and stop the WEF Fourth Reich. Right, guys? Send me an email, contact at whatsupcanada.org if there's anything you need or any question that I can answer, and support your non-taxpayer stolen journalism, the fake media, Mockingbird Media. If you want to help out here and keep this free for everybody, there's a couple of ways to do that. Donate at whatsupcanada.org. Keeps all of it goes to me rather than going to platform cuts, but Substack is another one. Link down below there for I think 50 cents a show, $8 a month. You can help keep this free for everybody. So until tomorrow, or perhaps in a few minutes, I'm not sure how this tech thing is going to work with Sean's stream, but tune in for that if you want to on the Sean Newman podcast, and have some fun with what will probably be the craziest election night coverage in Canada. So I love you all. We'll see you tomorrow.